All right, joining me now is Dr. Tony Wolf. Hey, Tony, thanks for taking the time to be on the podcast today.
Happy to do it, Fritz. I've been looking forward to this for quite a while now.
Yeah, likewise. And I'll chat a little bit with you about our past and our history and how I know you. It's a big story for me. But in this episode, we're really going to focus on your work and your journey alongside the growth and evolution of the Virginia wine industry. So first, I'd like to ask you, how you got interested and started in the vineyard industry. So can you give us a little background about what drew you to be interested in vineyards and wine grape growing?
Well, Fritz, I really can't talk about how I got into grape growing without actually bringing my dad into the equation. He was really one of my first mentors and one of the strongest mentors I had. He really taught me how to grow things, and he instilled in me an interest in growing things. We had a small grape arbor growing up, and we made wine each year. So I had that added benefit of being able to see this transition of grapes into wine, and that really fascinated me. So spring forward to high school, I put in my own little vineyard, and it was not a wine grape vineyard, but it did further catalyze my interest in grapes and in horticulture in a more general sense. So I got into college, and that interest in viticulture was focused. And as you know, I went on to graduate school and obtained master's and a PhD, both in viticulture. But what was important in that also was that I wanted to stay in the East. I wanted to move into a faculty position somewhere in the East. That's where my training was. That's where my interest was. And I was really fortunate to be able to coincide with an opening at Virginia Tech for a new viticulture position. They did not have a position there, so I was moving into a brand new position. So that was, in a nutshell, is kind of how my interest evolved in viticulture.
You've been helping growers in Virginia. Let's talk about the journey from when you started to now, maybe some of the challenges, successes, or adjustments or pivoting you had to do along the way. Let's start with some specific challenges to growing grapes in Virginia or the northeastern U.S. in general that you had to work with growers to overcome or adapt to. The Northeast is not an easy place to grow grapes. We have lots of weather challenges. So what are growers facing there that maybe a grower in California, for example, is not facing?
Well, I think we all face challenges. If I could go back to the mid-'80s and explain what those major challenges were at that time, I've touched on some of these already. For example, the varietal choice. What's being grown in the vineyard? Is it the best suited variety for Virginia's climate and topography? So that's something that's taken quite a while to sort out, and it's a moving situation too, because people are bringing in new varieties and trying new varieties that we don't really have any experience with. So there's been a continuum of evaluation of new varieties in the state, and our current interest is really with varieties that may have more disease resistance than some of the original varieties like Chardonnay that are still growing. We actually have some of the same climatic challenges today that we did in the 80s. Cold injury has not gone away. Spring frost injury has not gone away. We understand it a little bit better, and we can reinforce the recommendations that we originally gave for finding sites that are less prone to spring frost and less prone to winter injury. But we still have growers. This was the situation in the mid-'80s. The growers that put in vineyards own their land typically already, and they were forced to really find the best sites on that property to put their vineyard in. The thing that has changed over the years is that we've seen an influx of growers who haven't purchased land yet, and they take the time to research the parcels of land. We helped in this regard with our extension program, for example, by developing the geographical information system-based approach to vineyard establishment. It offered a good first stab, so to speak, approach at, is this site a good site for a vineyard? And if it is, then you take the second approach and start looking on with feet on the ground, boots on the ground, of what the limitations might be with that. Look, we still have rain at inopportune times. We're currently facing that right now. And despite a very dry summer, we ended up with rain in September, and that's a hardship that growers still face. And we're actually actively looking at some different means of protected culture that might won't completely remedy the situation, but might help with some of the problems that we have with rainfall. We also have occasional droughts at times. We've had 2 very dry years, and not that many vineyards have irrigation, but something that has changed over the years, or we are seeing more vineyards being installed or established with irrigation. And I think that's a good adaptation, although it does cost money.
What's the economy going to do in 5 years? You never know. And,
Yeah.
but that being said, this is a question that just came to mind now. When you look at the wineries and growers that have been most successful, let's say it's someone who grows grapes and makes wine, the true Vigneron kind of model. What is it that you find is the trend or similarity across the board that equals success? The ones that are still in business today and still enjoying it and still
Mhm.
going out and making good wine and proud to be part of it, but actually making a living doing it.
Yeah.
What's the common thread there?
Passion.
Passion.
Passion. These people have a passion for what they're doing, and they use that to educate themselves, to always be a student of what they're doing. They're trying to be better. If they have a problem, like an invasive pest comes in, I'm taking just to the vineyard now. They're the first ones. When I was employed, they would be the first ones who would be contacting us and saying, "Look, we're seeing something, we don't understand what it is." So they're on the leading edge of implementing the recommendations that we're giving. They're lifelong learners, and they're passionate about what they do. You have to be when it's 100 degrees out and you have to pick grapes, or it's freezing and you have to prune grapes. You have to have that. So I think that's a common adjective, if I could say, of how I would describe these people.
What advice would you give to yourself, let's say 25 years ago when you were just getting started in the Virginia wine industry?
Uh, well, I've thought about this a lot. I've had other occasions where I've given talks on reflecting on my career, and I don't have any real regrets about what I did, what I chose to do over the course of my career. The advice I would probably give myself, if any, would be to be a little bit more focused on research that has higher potentials for positive outcomes. Um, but I would probably not change much else. I enjoyed everything I did with my career. I had an extension appointment. I had a research appointment. I took on a teaching appointment as well, which I really liked. And most growers didn't really realize this. I had a pretty heavy administrative appointment as well from 2003 on. But what I would not do, if I could tell myself this, would be to get involved in doing research that is intractable, that really doesn't have a great deal of potential for positive outcome. Case in point, we have a problem. I'll use the example with Viognier. Most people know that it has bud necrosis, for primary bud necrosis. We don't fully understand that. But the opportunity I had with my first PhD student was to do some work on this. And she did, Lakshmi Vasudevan, did some really good research that pointed towards low carbohydrate levels in buds that were more prone to bud necrosis. And we published that work, but the ultimate outcome, take home message was we still don't really know why the carbohydrate levels would be low. And we don't know why there's site-to-site variability in the frequency of bud necrosis. We have some vineyards that get 6 tons per acre on Viognier, and others that can barely get 1.5 tons an acre. So that kind of research is intellectually interesting, but it didn't really have a huge impact on the grape industry. So that's what I would caution myself, if I could, not to do that type of research or not being so heavily invested in it.